A warning before we begin. This series contains reference to child sex abuse. Welcome to our 7th and final episode of Pirate Predator. In previous episodes, we told you about Claire, not her real name, the girl who had Eamon Cooke's first child when she was just a young teenager.
I was a victim of Eamon Cooke from the age of 13.
Claire has kept silent for over 40 years. But listening to this series as it's been publishing, she decided it was finally time to speak out. These are her words, voiced by an actor.
Today, we have words for what happened to me. Child sexual exploitation, sexual abuse, statutory rape, coercive control, psychological abuse, violence and threats, complete control.
You remember that Claire, her child, and her then boyfriend were targeted by Eamon Cooke in a firebomb attack in 1984.
At that time, I was dating a young man. He was targeted because of his association with me. I did occasionally visit his flat, and had we been there on the night of the attack, we could both have been killed. Eamon Cooke changed his plea to guilty on the morning of his trial. As witnesses, we were left to watch proceedings unfold, while he ultimately avoided serving a prison sentence. That remains a source of profound hurt. He left the court accompanied by an underage girl. For all of this, I feel I received no justice. In 1986, newspaper reports described me as Eamon Cooke's girlfriend. In 2026, people finally recognised the truth. I was not his girlfriend, I was his victim.
I'm Peter Mulryan from RTE Documentary on One. This is Pirate Predator, Episode 7, Endgame.
This was the case of my career because it took 10 years from start to finish.
This is Detective Inspector Gerry Kelly. He's the officer who led the investigation into Cooke's abuse.
But nobody had any idea of how complex it was all going to turn out. That's for certain.
Throughout those first months of his investigation in the year 2000, Gerry knew he needed more victims to come forward to ensure Cooke would face trial.
Siobháin was certainly very front and centre in this investigation, as was Áine, but Siobháin was providing different details, bits and pieces, names and addresses and people maybe we should contact.
So Gerry began to build a wider case, but many of Cooke's victims were scared.
We interviewed several people. There was a number of boys who were interviewed. I remember even interviewing another female victim. These offences had taken place 15, 20 years earlier. The fear that was in them was palpable.
Initially, there were 7 victims, including Siobháin and Áine, who agreed to give statements, enough to bring Cooke in for questioning in February 2000.
We subsequently arrested him one early morning. I remember a nice bright spring morning. Once he was interviewed, he was released pending a file to the DPP.
Over the next 2 years, as he awaited trial, Cooke spiralled out of control. His third wife continued to give birth to more of his children, as Gerry Kelly and the other Gardaí continued to work closely with local social services.
They had visited Cooke's house at several times. He intimidated them, and his master trick was to write to the Minister for Social Welfare. He would also write long letters to the Minister for Justice. These would be foolscap pages, probably 9 or 10 neatly handwritten pages, and he would weave lies and truth.
By the summer of 2000, Eamon Cooke was charged with multiple counts of buggery, indecent assault and unlawful carnal knowledge. In total, over 120 sex abuse charges, all against children. None of this, though, stopped Cooke's menacing behaviour.
He was a wolf in sheep's clothing.
One of the anonymous tips he received via our webpage, rte.ie/Pirate Predator, is from someone who appears to have been close to the situation.
He controlled everything, had personal information on care staff, followed them, knew their car registration, etc. He damaged care staff's cars. He manipulated everything. He was a dirty old man that had no fear.
Local social workers suspected Cooke was monitoring their office phones because he always seemed to know their movements. Around this time, his behaviour was also becoming increasingly unstable. On one particular occasion, Cooke led Gardaí on a high-speed car chase through Dublin.
He had 3 or 4 children in the car, and a Gardaí from Ballyfermot intercepted him, and he was arrested for dangerous driving, and he subsequently got a 6-month sentence for that.
It was during the summer of 2002 that pre-trial motions began to take place in Cooke's case, and it was then that one of the 7 victims backed out, the male victim.
I left 6 of us, and 6 of us were adamant we were going forward.
But just as the trial was due to start, Detective Inspector Gerry Kelly hit a speed bump.
All set to go, everybody full steam ahead, until he came up with this thing on the morning of the trial.
As these 6 victims were abused by Cooke some 15 to 20 years earlier, Cooke and his legal team now questioned their delay in bringing forward allegations, successfully arguing that the trial could only proceed if they could prove they lived under Cooke's fear and domination.
We had to go to see a clinical psychologist, and we had to prove this fear and domination as to why I never came forward and why I'm only speaking now.
This is Mary, not her real name. We heard from her in an earlier episode. She was one of the 6 victims who agreed to go to trial and who, in the wake of her abuse, had developed OCD.
That wasn't regarded as, there was anything wrong with me. But sure, I didn't know that was a reaction to what had happened to me.
Mary found the questioning by the court-appointed clinical psychologist very, very difficult.
To go in and try and explain yourself to a man that's never met you, and for 3 hours that he is expected to know you and get into your mind as to why you didn't decide to go and give this evidence in the first place is a very hard position to deal with when you feel that you weren't believed. That's what I felt at the time. I wasn't believed.
And the judge ruled that 2 of the victims, in his opinion, were not in fear of Cooke. And the result of that was that the crimes committed against them never got to trial, and they were dismissed.
I was devastated when it didn't go forward. I was absolutely devastated.
Mary's fear of Eamon Cooke remains visceral to this day, and not being given a chance at justice still haunts her and triggers childhood memories.
I was part of Irish dancing. I was in gymnastics. I was a Gardaí. I left everything that I loved doing. I stopped going out to play. I actually became a hermit.
The court also ruled that Claire, the mother of Cooke's first child, whom we heard from earlier, failed to prove she also lived in fear of him.
Right now, I cannot fully tell my story. The Irish courts did that to me. They took away my voice. Eamon Cooke never served 1 hour in prison for what he did to me.
With Claire and Mary now gone, that meant that just 4 victims had made it through to give evidence in Cooke's trial. In the lead up to the trial itself, Cooke began to intimidate some of the witnesses involved. Also, he was breaching bail conditions, and so a warrant was put out for his arrest. But Gardaí didn't know where he was.
I was the crime editor of the Sunday World at the time.
This is crime journalist Paul Williams.
These are the letters he sent me.
Throughout late 2002, Eamon Cooke began writing letters to Paul Williams.
He wrote to the Sunday World, so obviously I made contact with him.
Cooke actually believed that Paul would help him out.
He was claiming all the time that he was being accused of wrong. In some way he thought he was going to manipulate me and the Sunday World into doing his bidding.
In all of Cooke's communications with Paul, he talked obsessively about a pre-teen girl.
The way he was talking about this child, he was completely delusional. I'm in love with it, like it was a love story. And I'm not easily shocked. It was actually really sleazy. He was painting the picture for me of a paedophile right in front of my eyes.
On the 3rd of November 2002, less than 2 weeks before his trial was due to start, Cooke was now a fugitive. He made this recording while on the run. It was broadcast on Radio Dublin.
Well, it's an unusual voice, I'm sure, to hear on a radio. I haven't been on it for a very long time.
This was to be his his last ever broadcast.
Sunday afternoon used to be the time many, many years ago. Station news at yours truly. But those days are, I'm afraid, gone.
Just like that broadcast in 1978 after the mutiny at Radio Dublin, Cooke played the innocent victim.
Unfortunately, I won't be around for, I think, a long time. So many people want me out of circulation.
The captain's usual ramblings were now tinged with the reality of his situation.
The station, unfortunately, has to do without me for considerable time now, I think. Time for me to go. Maybe I'll get back on the air at some stage in the future. I think it's going to be the distant future. Goodbye. God bless.
The day after this broadcast, on November 4th, Cooke again wrote to Paul Williams.
He says, "Dear Paul, it's me again. This time is a letter from a man on the run with a warrant out for my arrest for breach of a High Court order."
Paul contacted Gardaí and together they came up with a plan.
Basically, I decided I was going to meet him in a public place. I was going to give him up to the police, so I rang the police and said, "Look, I'm meeting this man in the old Red Cow pub." And I remember basically talking to him for a while, and I had texted the guards and made my excuses and left. So I went back to the car, and then as he walked out, 3 or 4 guards just surrounded him.
Within a week of his arrest and detention, Cooke would finally be on trial for abuse charges, facing Siobháin, Anne and 2 other survivors in court. Even though the women we're calling Mary and Claire were not allowed to testify against Cooke, they still attended each day's court hearing.
6 of us that made the original complaint went in and sat together. And Eamon Cooke wanted myself and the other lady whose case was stayed removed from sitting beside the other 4 victims. But that didn't happen.
When Cooke's trial began on November the 18th, 2002, the press seized on a nickname his victims had given him years earlier, Cookie Monster. And now the breadth of his crimes were laid bare.
It took almost 2 hours to read each charge because they had to be read to him separately. The reply was not guilty to each one of them.
By denying all the charges against him, Eamon Cooke made it all the more grueling for Anne and Siobháin.
This had now become his new weapon, and now we were still going to have to be forced to go through this whole trial.
In giving her evidence, Siobháin was confronting her trauma again.
The hardest part for me was being cross-examined and my parents having to listen, and I had to actually say what happened for the first time. And I remember looking at my mum and dad in the gallery and I'm going, oh my God, I have to disclose this after so many years. And basically that was the hardest part for me, because then I actually said what happened, that Eamon Cooke used to perform oral sex on us children when we were so young. And that's when I saw my mum collapsing, because nobody knew, because nobody asked. So that was difficult.
The trial itself was an ordeal for all the victims.
Trials are difficult. This one went on for 6 weeks, and you're sitting there every day. We're all also trying to deal with the impact on our family, because the entire families of everybody are impacted also. The dynamic of sitting in a courtroom with such a personal case.
Gerry Kelly remembers the power of all 4 victims' testimony on the stand.
Siobháin was the first to take the stand, and Áine followed her. They were very good, and they got across that sense of terror and fear that they had. And then you had the picture of these little girls, 7 and 8, naked, being lifted up and sexually assaulted by Cooke. It was absolutely powerful, and I think everybody took deep breaths. It was powerful, and the jury had awful sympathy for them. Cooke himself didn't take the stand.
3 days after Christmas, on the 28th of December 2002, the jury returned their verdict.
The 6 of us are still sitting there, and your nerves are absolutely shattered, because we've been through so much. But when you hear that guilty verdict, oh my God, there's nothing as good as that feeling.
We were just elated. We were just so jubilant, so elated. The guards were elated. Everybody was elated.
Cooke was convicted on 31 sample sex abuse charges. Weeks later, Siobháin returned to the court for sentencing. And even at this stage, Cooke was still trying his best to intimidate.
I walked in, see the judge. We're sitting in a line, and out comes Eamon Cooke. Walks in and sits beside me. And he's writing my name over and over again on a journal.
You're welcome back at 257 Live. Some news just into us now from the court. 66-year-old Eamon Captain Cooke, the founder of pirate radio station Radio Dublin, has been jailed for 10 years for sexually abusing 4 young girls in the 1970s and 1980s. And jailing him on over 30 charges, Mr Justice Quirk said he could find no mitigating circumstances in favour of Cooke. We do hope to have more on that for you after.
There was absolutely no remorse, and on that day we thought it was done and dusted.
In the months after his convictions, Eamon Cooke was attacked in prison. It's understood he was repeatedly and viciously kicked in his groin area. He recovered from that attack and set about mounting a legal challenge and lodging numerous appeals against his conviction. In his appeal, Cooke managed to successfully argue against his convictions on the grounds of a legal technicality.
Oh, talk about a kick in the stomach. That was massive.
Gerry Kelly again.
The judge failed to warn the jury due to the passage of time that the witnesses' memories could be affected, and the Court of Criminal Appeal held with him.
Although Anne could see the Court of Criminal Appeal had little alternative but to release Cooke, that didn't make it any easier.
There wasn't any way around it. In particularly historical cases. So he walked because his rights were breached. Oh my word. The irony.
After waiting decades for justice and believing they had finally stopped Cooke from abusing more children, this news was crushing for everyone involved in the trial, including Siobháin.
That was absolutely horrendous. Absolutely. There's no words for that devastation. So then I was back to square one again, only more angry. Because I said, where are my rights in this country?
By 2006, Cooke was a free man. His convictions overturned, his name removed from the sex offenders register. Gardaí wanted to go for a retrial, but Anne didn't think she could take any more.
I know that I emailed DPP and probably, frankly, fucked them to a height. And I know Gerry Kelly, the most gentlest soul on the planet, when he rang me, I'd said to him too, they can go fuck themselves. Absolutely not am I putting myself through that again.
Of the 4 victims from the first trial, only Siobháin was willing or able to take the stand again. Detective Inspector Gerry Kelly feared that wouldn't be enough.
Sometimes the DPP will say there isn't enough evidence. We feel to do it a second time round.
Was that your fear?
That is your fear. And it became a very real fear.
They didn't think it might be very successful because at that stage I was going on my own. I didn't have a backup. I just said, I'll see how far I can get. I wouldn't be able to sleep with myself if I didn't think that I could give everything I could into getting this man on a sex offenders register.
Siobháin wrote a letter to the DPP, but it convinced the DPP and she convinced that they would run again with it. So Anne realised there was going to be a retrial. She rejoined it and said, I'll give evidence a second time round.
It was just Siobháin and Anne now, and the fear of Cooke was more real than ever.
It was a very scary time. I used to check under my car. I used to watch my kids going to school. And when the second trial came, I was really, really scared that if he got off, then I was just terrified.
Having given evidence in the first trial, James Dillon, the DJ who back in 1978 led the staff walkout from Radio Dublin when Siobháin's allegations first emerged, was called as a witness again.
Gerry Kelly contacted me again and said, are you prepared to go again? I said, yeah, absolutely.
Cooke's retrial began in January 2007.
The obvious defence for them was that the DJs didn't leave because of the abuse, that they left in order to set up an alternative station, and that I left to make more money. I knew what they were referring to, and they had a book in their hand.
The book that Cooke's defence were presenting in evidence was my book, Radio. And this was the moment it came back to haunt me.
Then they started reading some passages from the book, and then the judge had to stop him and say, just because it's written in a book doesn't make it true.
The passage in question is where I put the allegations of child abuse to Eamon Cooke, which he denied, adding that James Dillon's motivation for leaving was financial, which of course was not true. So Eamon Cooke was using a story he had told me as evidence of his innocence. Gerry Kelly watched as Cooke tried to worm his way out of the trial in whatever way he could think of.
Same hoo-ha again, fought tooth and nail. Cooke feigned that he had a broken leg, that he tripped and he fell. He couldn't come to court one day. He couldn't sit on the hard seats in the court. Played the game as best he could.
17 days later, the verdicts were in.
Irish Independent, March 2nd, 2007. The founder of the former Radio Dublin pirate station has been found guilty of sexually assaulting young girls at his home some 30 years ago. 70-year-old Eamon Captain Cooke was unanimously convicted by a jury at the Central Criminal Court.
Cooke was back behind bars, having been sentenced to 10 years in prison for a second time.
But there was no jubilation. There was no sense of victory. There was just exhausted disbelief.
The day after the second trial ended, Siobháin and her father drove to Wales. All these years later, Siobháin can remember exactly what her dad said to her on that journey.
I have to tell you something he said. I've felt very guilty as a father that I didn't protect you enough. And he said, but I really tried. I really tried.
Siobháin's dad was sobbing now, fighting back the tears.
He said, you know, many years ago, there was a man who lived in the same area as us, and he was a policeman. I said, I do. He said, well, that's who I went to. And he gave me the phone number and made arrangements for me to meet another man who was a policeman also. I said, does this man have a name? He said, he does. He said, his name is Bimbo. And I remember the name very distinctly because it's an unusual name.
And as you know, Bimbo was the Garda who gave Cooke the nickname Alpha 7 and who was a regular visitor to Radio Dublin in the late 70s. It's only now, all those years later, that Siobháin and her father understood exactly what had happened.
And he said, well, the way he put it to me was Eamon Cooke was known to the Gardaí and he wasn't known as a savoury character. And he said, I'm very sorry for what happened to your daughter, but he said, you have younger children. And he said, so I think you're better off going home and looking after your younger family, Liam.
Instead of helping Siobháin's father get justice for his daughter, Bimbo enabled Cooke to continue abusing children. For Siobháin, this was the missing proof she had always suspected, that certain Gardaí shielded Cooke throughout the 1970s and 80s.
What struck me most was the extraordinary lengths he went to in order to control everything and everyone around it.
Even from behind bars, Cooke continued to harass members of his own family, some of his victims, and anyone supporting them, including this worker who contacted us.
During the period I had a professional involvement with his case, I received letters at my workplace, sent directly from his prison cell. He knew my name. He knew where I worked. He knew the names of people around me, that he knew where I lived. I was left in absolutely no doubt about what he wanted me to understand, that he was watching, and that he was still in control, even when he was in prison.
Continuing letters of harassment resulted in barring orders being issued against him, while those who had long escaped his clutches still lived with the impact Cooke had on them. We're at a house on a quiet cul-de-sac in Blackrock, County Dublin. This is where Cooke's second wife, Joan, moved to after leaving him in the late 1980s. And her neighbours remember her.
Joan Cooke.
Did you know her?
Yeah.
What's she like?
I found her all right.
Yeah? Did Joan ever talk about Eamon Cooke?
Sometimes.
What would she say?
Oh, she said he was nothing but a bastard. Gave her an awful life. She didn't deserve that. No one deserves it. I think she did leave him. But as I said, I got on all right with her.
She had a tough life.
Yeah, she had.
Joan developed Alzheimer's, her neighbours say, and died in 2009. The following year, Eamon Cooke received further lengthy jail sentences, details of which we cannot legally report on. And over the next 5 years or so, Eamon Cooke slipped out of the spotlight. He did, however, continue to appeal every conviction he ever received. Cooke would appear in court over 100 times since going to jail in 2001, with all his legal representation paid for by the taxpayer through free legal aid. Now in his late 70s, his days spent chain-smoking Rothman cigarettes caught up with him. He was diagnosed with lung cancer, but elected not to have any treatment.
I only saw him once in prison a year ago, and he had Alzheimer's. He went to prison when I was 9.
These are the words of one of Eamon Cooke's daughters when interviewed by the Irish Mirror a number of years ago.
I didn't have a very good childhood.
As Cooke's cancer progressed, he was removed to a Dublin hospice for the final weeks of his life, where a number of his children visited him in his dying days, including this daughter.
Before he even died, I did tell him that I forgave him. It was for myself, but also for the fact that being an Irish person, you're meant to respect the dead, basically. And I don't believe anyone should die with so much guilt and all. It was to give him peace. I think everyone, no matter who someone is, they deserve peace.
Cooke's daughter wasn't his only deathbed visitor. The Gardaí visited him too, twice. And the reason was because of a victim from his 2003 trial came forward with a childhood memory from when she was 9, an eyewitness account which could potentially solve one of Ireland's most notorious missing child cases. Philip Kearns.
A woman came forward last month with new information which detectives believe to be credible. The woman told Gardaí that the convicted paedophile Eamon Cooke may have killed the child at the studios of his pirate radio station in Dublin in October 1986. Our security correspondent Paul Reynolds.
The woman told the Gardaí that Cooke knew Philip Kearns and had promised to take him to visit the radio station. She said, however, that when they got to the studios in Inchicore, a row broke out while she was in another room, and that Eamon Cooke struck the child with an implement. She said she went into the room and saw the 13-year-old boy bleeding and unconscious on the floor. She told the Gardaí she then fainted, and when she woke up, she was in a car being driven by Eamon Cooke. She kept this information to herself for almost 30 years.
When Gardaí questioned Cooke on his deathbed, he could only give yes/no answers, but he did appear to indicate that he knew Philip Kearns.
Now, he denied murdering Philip, but apparently detectives had gone and questioned him on 2 occasions while he was in the hospice.
This is Gareth O'Callaghan, a former DJ with Radio Dublin and 2FM, who has always harboured doubts about the connection between Eamon Cooke and Philip Kearns.
It didn't make sense to me because he was in a very, very late stage of Alzheimer's. How could they extract confession from him? They said he confessed to knowing Philip. And I think that set the cat among the pigeons and immediately decided for a lot of people, this is the guy, he knew Philip.
Someone else this didn't make sense to was another of Eamon Cooke's daughters.
Unfortunately, once something is reported publicly, it can continue to circulate as fact even when the reality is different.
Another daughter of Eamon Cooke's provided us with a statement for this series, some of which we use in this episode, and all of which you can hear in our bonus episode, which follows. Even though she didn't grow up in the care of her father, she did visit him in his final weeks in the hospice.
At that stage, he was suffering from severe dementia and often did not even recognise his own name. Whatever people believe about him, the reality at the end of his life was very different from the image often portrayed.
Someone who felt compelled to go to Gardaí in 2016, when the Cooke and Philip Kearns story emerged, was Gary Byrne.
I literally spent every hour there. There was a great buzz around the station then because the phones were hopping, the ads were coming in, money was coming in.
Aged 14, Gary was a year older than Philip Kearns. Gary worked part-time in Radio Dublin, including through October 1986, the month Philip vanished.
In relation to Philip Kearns, I was in the station, I was on air around all that time. I was around the station all the time. I can categorically say that I never saw that boy in Radio Dublin, ever.
Though a courageous witness brought Philip's case back into the spotlight, despite searching Cooke's properties, Gardaí found no evidence or DNA linking him with the crime. Still an active missing persons case, Philip's case may be upgraded to a murder inquiry later this year, marking 40 years since he vanished. Eamon Cooke died on June 4th, 2016, a day Siobháin and Anne still remember.
When I heard Eamon Cooke died, I said, "You're going to meet your maker now, and I hope you rot in hell."
I felt just free of a physical force that had existed in my life for as long back as I could remember, essentially, and a physical force that was set against me all my life and that I had to battle with all my life, whether it was in a courtroom or in my mind or in my daily living growing up. It was a dominant, dark force. I have said to many people, I really hate this calling them evil and elevating them to that level of good or bad. His problem was not that he was evil. His problem was that he was a fucked up, unevolved, inadequate, the smallest nature of a man you could pack in to an adult human body.
Less than a dozen people attended Eamon Cooke's funeral in Glasnevin Cemetery. Even in death, he extracted one last act of control, being buried with his first wife Lena, the woman whose relations believe was murdered by electrocution. Eamon Cooke's death marked the end of fear for many of his victims, but he left behind an unimaginable legacy of damaged lives.
I've been to counselling in the last couple of years, which has helped me.
This is Mary again, who has never spoken publicly until now.
No matter how much counselling you get, the scars are there. They're not visible. They're emotional scars. And you're grieving for what could have been in your life. Because everything that happened to me after that, I think it's a direct result of what happened to me in his house.
And Claire, who, like Mary, never got to have her evidence heard in court.
I am a survivor, but there has been a huge cost to surviving what I lived through. There has also been a cost for my family. This is my statement. This is my truth. I have lived with the consequences for decades.
Those involved in bringing Cooke to justice believe his victims number into the hundreds. They have also been living with the consequences of his actions for decades, some driven to addiction or suicide. And then there were Cooke's own children, including another daughter who wrote a letter to us, part of which is read here by an actor.
My whole life trajectory was shaped by who he was and what he did. It was his actions that traumatised my siblings and affected my ability to have close relationships with many of them. Growing up, there was always the fear that people would connect my history and my surname to him, even though I never knew him and had no part in the things that he had done. That fear stays with you. It affects your sense of identity, your sense of safety, and how you move through the world.
We know that many of Cooke's children changed their names, moved countries, moved continents, and gained a whole new identity. All were marked in various ways by the actions of their father. Another of Cooke's daughters also sent us a statement, part of which is read here by an actor.
The victims deserve compassion and recognition for what they endured. At the same time, his children have also had to live with the consequences of his actions for most of our lives. Many of us are now parents ourselves and are trying to build normal lives for our own families, but stories like this bring everything back up again.
Given Cooke's prolific abuse and decades of operating with apparent immunity, survivors like Siobháin feel a comprehensive state inquiry is long overdue to finally ask the difficult questions.
There's too many unanswered questions, and there's a lot of people out there that know a lot of things about Eamon Cooke. I'd like to know why he wasn't stopped. I really want to know how many different organisations could have helped me, my family, and stopped him going forward. The Gardaí, the clergy, they had many opportunities to do so. I feel they wanted me to go away into a corner. You know, with the podcast, I know a lot of people have come forward because they've come forward to me personally. So I know that has worked. And therefore, I feel that there should be a commission of inquiry for all the other people that want to come forward in any capacity that they've had their dealings with Eamon Cooke, be it good or bad. And I just think that for all the years, like this is 50 years of my life, and I'm fighting, and I felt that the system didn't back me. I felt the system was geared towards him every step of the way. And I hope that the powers that be, like that the government, can finally say, we'll have an inquiry into how this abuse, litany of decades, carried on, and who should be held accountable.
We've said it before, and we'll say it again as we bring this series to a close. Siobháin and Anne and all the victims and people who stood up to Eamon Cooke, whether in court or in Radio Dublin, whether behind the scenes or in the shadows. They are all the heroes of a story that should never have happened and never been allowed to happen. Throughout the last 50 years, Siobháin and Anne have remained close friends, a testimony to their faith and trust in each other.
We've overcome it because obviously we're still sitting here together. 60. We're in our 50s now.
We're nearly 60. We're nearly in our 60s. We're not in our 50s much.
No.
Even through the hard times, they managed to find a way to eventually get justice and place one of Ireland's most prolific ever paedophiles behind bars.
Even through arguments, periods of times, like when you went to England, we still kept in touch because we wouldn't let him win. Because if we fell out then, after the experience that we went through, I felt he would have won. Now, that's not the reason that I'm friends with Anne. I'm friends with Anne because I love her and because of what we've gone through together. And I think she's the only other person that can understand me totally, flaws and all. So we accept each other. I'm getting emotional now, sorry. I don't normally say that to your face.
We're normally much more harsh with each other than we're rarely sentimental, are we?
Very rarely.
For me, I came into this project to try and make sense of a story I stumbled into over 40 years ago. Having spent the last 6 months working on this series and meeting with so many people with knowledge of it, I'm now left with more questions than answers. But the one above all others is, how did Eamon Cooke get away with it all for so long? Stay tuned for a bonus episode featuring some of the 80+ tips we received from listeners and those full statements from Eamon Cooke's children and others. If you know anything about Eamon Cooke, please continue to contact us in confidence at documentaries@rte.ie, or you can leave an anonymous tip on rte.ie/pirate predator. Readings are by Hazel Burton, Alva Colgan, Dougal Greer and Pauline Mangan. Pirate Predator is narrated by me, Peter Mulryan. The series is produced by myself,
together with me, Nicoline Greer,
and me, Shauna McGreevy,
and me, Liam O'Brien.
The music is composed and performed by me, Alma Kelliher, with Ste Carolan on guitars.
And sound design is by me, Damian Chennells.
Until next time, thanks for listening.